The bandwidth for this episode of the AR-15 podcast is sponsored by the Firearms Radio Network. Firearmsradio.tv.
Welcome to episode number 89 of the AR-15 podcast. I'm your host, Reed Snyder, and with me today is my co-host, J.W. Ramp. This is the podcast about your favorite black rifle. This show is for you, whether you're building your first AR or you've been building ARs for years. There's something we can all do to take our black rifle to the next level. J.W., how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing all right. Still reporting from behind enemy lines here in a gun-free zone.
Well, you know, we're sending care packages. Of course, none of them have any bullets or tools or even spare parts, because that would just kind of be mean and cruel to send you all that stuff. But our thoughts are with you.
I had a buddy swing by my house to borrow some of my night vision and infrared illuminator, and so he's going to get to have some fun while I'm out.
And you were okay with that?
Oh, yeah.
Now, is this a vicarious?
He's a very good friend.
Okay. Well, before we get too far into the show tonight, let's talk about Brownells, who helps make this show possible. We want you to remember that that Brownells, with their 100% lifetime satisfaction guarantee, is there for you anytime you have a problem, like when you can't remove the taper pins from your new barrel to slip off the front sight base, and now you have to find a new barrel. So this leads me to the next big part of Brownell's involvement with the show, and that's the fact that they are sponsoring a complete AR-15 rifle giveaway. This week we have finalized the assembly of the gas tube on our rifle, and we have finalized the placement of the front sight. So we're mounting the Dynacomp Extreme flash hider from Spikes Tactical, and basically giving the bolt carrier group and the Raptor charging handle a final resting place in the rifle for this week's piece of the build. And I think that with this, we've essentially brought the rifle to completion in its final state, barring the addition of its accessories, which there are a few. So Brownells has been extraordinary.
Yeah, the Raptor charging handle is something that I've always heard just fantastic reviews of. I haven't really played with one myself, but it's always kind of between that and the gunfighters, and I think it definitely is applicable in our topic this evening.
Absolutely, and you know, I actually have 3 of them, so I'm a big fan of all of them.
Well, there you go.
The parts that we've got here, completing the build, will put our rifle into a full state of readiness here. The accessories are just basically some niceties for the build, and we'll begin assembling those and going through some function tests and getting some videos done. But ladies and gentlemen, the build has reached completion without too many more major issues, and I think what we have in its final form is everything that we had expected from the rifle in its vision, and certainly we're excited to get it out on the range and test it out for you. But with that, we want to remind you that you too can shop for your AR-15 parts at Brownells. All you need to do is go to ar15podcast.com/parts, and that will also help us to run this show a little more concisely and technically adept for you, since that seems to be one of our big issues of late. So that reminds me, I want to let you all know that we are continuously trying to upgrade the performance of our equipment, get the sound quality of our guests and hosts to a level that you will enjoy listening to. And so if you'll just give us some room. We're experimenting with some new approaches, and we're almost on the verge of having a professional studio here. Just don't tell my wife. So that leads us to our next piece before we get into tonight's main topic, and that is our tip of the week. So, JW, when was the last time you made a major change to one of your rifles?
Oh, it's always in a constant state of flux, I think. I know I just got a new upper from BCM, and I threw on an optic that I was running from a different upper, and haven't taken it to the range yet.
So how often do you do something so substantial that you need to go back and re-zero your rifle?
I think it's kind of few and far between. As long as it's a optic that I'm satisfied with, that doesn't crap out or anything like that, once it makes its way to the upper, it tends to stay there for a while.
Well, I have to admit that I'm a little bit the opposite. I have a tendency to
I figured.
Yeah, I swap out rails and tend to swap out mounts often enough that I feel like I have to get back to the range to re-zero my rifles just to have faith in them. And you know, last week we discussed in episode 88 some of the cursory details of sighting in your AR. Of course, it is incumbent upon our listeners to go out there and figure out exactly how they're going to zero their ARs, but we kind of painted some broad brushstrokes for all of you. Now, I did end up going to the range last Thursday and re-zeroed one of my rifles, and I zeroed it on a 25-meter zero. So, of course, on a range that measures everything in yards, I had to calculate 25 meters and turn it into 27 1/3 yards so I could get my zero a little closer to what it ought to be. So don't forget that little piece of arithmetic when you go out there to do it yourself. So with that, just remember, don't forget to re-zero every time you make a change to your AR when your sighting mechanics are impacted by that change. Well, JW, I guess tonight's show is really one that only you and I could put on, since we are both left-handed, and I think we might be the only lefties, one of the few lefties on the network.
Yep, it's a heavy burden to carry, but we've decided to band together and share that load. And this evening we're going to give you a little piece of the wonderful life of the lefty.
So I think my first experience with exactly how inhospitable ARs are to lefties was my rifle qualification in the Marine Corps, having hot brass in my collar while I was qualifying or in the week leading up to qualification. And knowing that
you never look at a firing line and expect that it's going to be a venue for dancing.
Right, right. Well, but in the Marine Corps, you're not allowed to dance. In fact, you're not allowed to scream like a little girl. You're not allowed to dance around. There's no prancing involved allowed. So it's kind of a grin and bear it and deal with it kind of moment. So that wasn't really a great deal of fun, but when I was qualifying, that was the way I shot the best. So there were plenty of times I wished I'd had a left-handed AR, and in talking about tonight's show, it struck me that for all of the availability that we have, which isn't enormous, but it's not insignificant, I still don't have a left-handed AR. I have a left-handed bolt-action Remington, but that's the only lefty I have in my safe. Everything else is a right-handed rifle. JW, is that your experience mostly?
Yeah, the only thing that I really have set up for a lefty is my AK, just because I think that the AK is set up to be a little bit easier for the lefty. For whatever reason, I end up running it a lot like the SCAR, and running an AK as a lefty, other than kind of flipping the safety on and off or the full auto selector on and off. It's not too bad as a lefty.
Huh. Well, so let's begin with some of the principal differences when we're talking about left-handed upper receivers in the AR. So it occurs to me that, of course, the principal difference is going to be your upper receiver.
Right,
And
that's the thing that you're going to notice when you see the gun either in a catalog or hanging up on the gun store wall. Oftentimes they'll flip it around so that it even feels left out. But you'll see that ejection port on the opposite side. And obviously that's going to help you with the hot brass issue. It's also going to help you if you're running suppressed and you're getting some gas blowback out of that big old opening on the side of your gun. It's going to direct it away from your face. Shooting right-handed ARs, for my entire experience with them, getting hot brass down the collar really hasn't been too much of an issue after my first couple tries. And so I mean, there's a couple things that it's going to help you with, but obviously the biggest thing is getting that brass going out the other way.
Right. Now, I think the next principal difference that is of importance is the whole mechanic of the bolt carrier has to be reversed in order for the left-handed AR to function in a true left-handed fashion. And so we've got a cam pin and we've got a channel that the cam pin rides through that basically, looking down on a standard bolt, are on the left side of that bolt. But in our left-handed bolt, it would be on the right side, going from forward of the gas key at the top, down along the right side to the rear in about, I don't know, it's probably not a 45-degree angle, but it's an angle of some sort so that that cam pin can allow the bolt as it travels back to rotate, or I guess the bolt carrier to travel back allows the bolt to rotate out of the barrel extension. So other than that, I'm not really sure that the bolt carriers are all that different. You know, I haven't looked at one close enough to figure out whether the forward assist, I guess, what would you call those machine points that engage the forward assist?
Oh, they're teeth. They're like little ledges.
So are the teeth on a left-handed bolt carrier for the forward assist machine on the left side, or are they still on the right side?
Oh, I'm sure it's just a complete mirror image. So kind of that divot that gets cut out the side of the bolt carrier group that's got those two holes that some people like to drop lubrication into. I'm sure that's all over on the left-hand side of the bolt carrier group. But yeah, like you were describing with the bolt, the whole purpose of that cam pin is to get the lugs of the bolt, once they go inside that barrel extension, to get them to rotate just half a notch or whatever so that they're retained inside of that barrel extension set of lugs. So that rotation is going to be backwards. That kind of brings up a point that some people debate back and forth whether every barrel extension is set up to be able to rotate either way, because it's really not. It's when your bolt lugs are entering your barrel extension, it's not interfacing with anything that causes it to rotate. There's no keyway or anything like that. That's all happening inside your bolt carrier with the cam pin. And so, kind of at first glance, as long as everything's chamfered ambidextrously, that all surfaces are chamfered uniformly and it's not set up to expect one rotation or the other, it seems like the barrel and the barrel extension should be fairly ambidextrous out of the box.
Right.
There's a little bit of back and forth because there are some people that sell specifically ambidextrous barrel extensions. It's just nothing that I've run into that I decided to crack open and take a closer look with a magnifying glass.
Right. Well, and you know, I think that that's one of those hair-splitting issues in the firearms world that plenty of people have sound experience to support, but may not necessarily be fact. You know.
Yeah, we're going to get into some of the manufacturers that put out these lefty guns, and I mean, we'd be happy to take a call from any one of you guys if you got somebody in the tech department or R&D that has some hands-on experience with this. We'd love to have a nice conversation about the intricacies of what you put into your guns to make them set up for the lefty shooter.
Absolutely. So with the bolt, you know, once again, it's another one of the key components. It's going to have to be modified in order for your rounds to eject out the port on the left side of your upper receiver now that we've switched over. And so basically, once again, it's mirrored, and not only just to put the ejection extractor on the left, but the ejector pin on the opposite side of the bolt, and make sure that the cam pin hole is in the right orientation to allow for the proper rotation of that bolt, as you would expect for a right-handed bolt. So, as you can see, with a portion of the population that really, amounts to 10%, it's probably not a substantial enough base of purchasers for everybody to carry the line. And I think that would probably be a pretty big investment of machining and tooling equipment to make all of the components the way they need to be made for a proper left-handed rifle. Wouldn't you say, JW?
Yeah, and just to have to stock both kinds on every gun store shelf. I mean, it's kind of asking retailers a lot to be able to provide for both.
But, you know, I think what ended up...
There are some guys that have really been able to make that investment and set up their guns to give you the choice. And these are guys that sell a ton of rifles in a lot of different configurations. You can go on their website and spec things out exactly how you want. And then there's a little drop down that says, hey, make it a lefty.
Right. You know, and I think what it is that some of the real big players like Stag Arms, they've been in it for so long that they have the ability to focus a strong enough portion of their manufacturing towards left-handed rifles, because I think that if you will talk to most people who buy left-handed rifles, Stag Arms is probably the first one that jumps up. We've got more than Stag Arms under our list of manufacturers, but in many instances, they don't even list the rifles on their websites. I think they may very well have custom lines that custom retailers are willing to pay for, but of course they're going to pass some of that expense on to you, the purchaser, because it's not a part of the tried and true line on the shelf. So why don't we get started with those manufacturers? And of course, as I was saying, Stag Arms seems to be the 800-pound gorilla in the room. They've been doing the left-handed AR for quite some time. So, JW, do you have any experience with Stag in general?
I don't. It's one of those that you see a bunch of options of. If you go to the big retailers, if you get like a cheaper than dirt catalog in the mail or something like that, those guys have some serious market reach as far as offering competitive prices on rifles that are built obviously to the same spec, on the same set of plans, but they maybe make some choices as far as not necessarily using the fanciest brand name accessories, and so they're able to keep the price down.
And you know, looking at the link that we put in the show notes, they run the gamut of pretty much all of your mainstay rifles. They start out in the, I think probably on the low end at real close to 900, 920 I think is the low end. And of course these are website prices for the manufacturer. I think you can probably find them retail with a little more room at the bottom for competitive pricing with what else is out there. But from there they go up, looks to about 1,500. Yeah, about 1,500 is the top end. So
Yeah, and when you're buying them straight from their website, it's actually a full configurable page. So you can run down, and if you want a Super 3 gun Geisley trigger, you can
Right.
choose that. You're not going to be wasting money on a mil-spec trigger that's just going to sit somewhere in your
like
workshop and go unused. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you know, it being such a large part of their line, I'm looking at their website, and they have so they have 16 rifles that are in a left-handed configuration, all the way from, you know, alternative calibers to piston, um, three-gun options. I mean, it's just the whole gamut of what any consumer would expect of a right-handed line, all in a left-handed form. Which, I mean, to me, once again, showcases Stag Arm's commitment to the idea that left-handed shooters are a portion of their, you know, purchasing population there.
Right. When you choose the category rifles, it opens up, do you want left hand or right hand? When you choose uppers, it says, would you like a left-handed upper or right-handed upper? I mean, you're not going to see that with a lot of guys. So I think that's why Stag sticks out so much.
Right. So another major manufacturer was Rock Arms, or Rock River Arms. So as we were doing some research, you know, Rock River Arms came up, and I'm a fan of their lowers. I have two of their lowers. They have some configurations that I'm really really happy with. I don't have them, but I've handled them. I've gotten to talk to some of the Rock River folks. They're just really nice, and of course, I've said it before. I'm, I guess, a bit of a fan when it comes to the Rock River Arms LAR-47. So, you know, as soon as I am able to find one of those not yet in production rifles, I may very well get myself one. But when it comes to the left-handed side of things, you know, Rock River does have, once again, a very wide selection of choices. They run the gamut in parallel with much of their principal AR-15 line. So their elite operator, tactical operator, entry operator, the car, the mid-length, standard Predator, Coyote varmints. You know, that is an enormously wide selection of choices for a left-handed shooter. And, you know, once again, I think that in many ways, Rock River, maybe not to the same degree as Stag, they give you some, you know, purchase point flexibility, allowing you to get in there and make some choices about configuration before you take a rifle home, and have to, once again, stick a whole bunch of the, you know, recently purchased components into a toolbox while you replace them with new gear. So, and I think that from my experience, you can't go wrong with Stag or Rock River. I don't hear a lot of people complaining about either line, and I've never had any complaints with the firearms that I've handled and fired.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have to argue with that at all.
Now, Noveski is another manufacturer that we came across, and frankly, I was a little surprised that they were able to provide a left-handed rifle. Now, I haven't been able to find any mention of them on their website. So the source we have is a site called lefthandrifles.com, and they have a number of rifles listed, although none of them are in stock. So
Yeah, and they're all legit photos. I mean, it's not like they copy and pasted the upper receiver and reversed it or anything like that. Um, I mean, they're photos of the rifles, so it sure looks like they exist somewhere.
yeah, and they do indicate that the temporarily out-of-stock rifles are eligible for being included. You're eligible for being placed on an order list, and so what it may very well be is they are in a position to order these custom built from Noveske, but Noveske is not willing to essentially commit manufacturing to an entire line of these rifles for a commercial line offering. And
Right. Noveske probably has a couple buckets full of these ambidextrous, or excuse me, left-handed uppers and bull carrier groups, but they don't necessarily throw them all together and put them in a box just yet.
No. And you know what, I would say that the prices of these rifles are really a lot more than I would put down on a rifle, considering that it is an AR. So, for instance, here's an Noveske M4 Recon left-handed that's listed at $2,740.
Right. When you're talking Noveske or LaRue, it's that sort of a category where maybe it's not necessarily full-on custom, but it's definitely a lower production number, very high-end sort of a market.
Right. And so I think you're going to probably get closer to custom fit, and what you're paying for is for them to give you a Noveske built rifle that is not off the shelf. So I think there's going to be a little extra attention paid to it because they're making it left-handed. But certainly you're going to pay a premium. And I'm not certain, but I don't think the Noveske N4 line, the Recon, is going to retail at $2,740. I think it comes in. I think it's several $100s less. But, it's still a multi-$1,000 rifle. But, you get Noveske quality when you buy one.
And you're helping to support some of those awesome videos that they've been putting out, which is great.
Another one that has in the past produced a left-handed rifle, but I cannot find any evidence that there are lefties still available, is DPMS. And of course, DPMS is going to be riding the line at the lower end of the ARs. They're entry-level rifles, and this is their Panther line. So this isn't, it isn't principally speaking one of the lines that's going to have a lot of the extras on it. And so that being the case, it may not be something that you're going to be real happy with. There's not a selection. There's no high run of choices. It basically seems to be a very small answer for what they consider a small group of purchasers. So I think that rounds up the principal portion of the manufacturers that are out there. I think, of course, you're always going to be able to find someone who's willing to build something for you if you're willing to pay for it. So whoever's name you want on it, if you've got the scratch, I think that you can have their rifle in a left-handed version. I don't know that that makes a whole lot of sense considering what's available out there already.
Yeah, so you can, like we already mentioned, these guys have uppers that you can buy, so you don't have to do the whole rifle, and you can find upper receivers as well that are on their own. If you want to piece some stuff together, do your own build. So obviously that's wide open for you. Moving on from like the left-handed operation, there's some manual of arms things that you can alter for a lefty. Right. We've kind of gotten into them in the past as far as accessories like the bad lever and ambidextrous safeties. What are some other things that you've seen out there?
Well, let's see. Norgon has a ambi mag release. That's a pretty good left-handed tool. Some of the lower receivers are coming with bolt releases that are purpose-built ambidextrous.
Yeah, they go like right through the receiver over to the other side.
Right. And I think here's the point that is interesting about the idea of a lefty build versus an ambi-controlled AR. Most of the ambi-control components, in fact all of them except for a charging handle in whatever form it may be, tend to be on the lower receiver. And I've never seen a lower receiver that is actually designed in a left-handed form factor. There is no left-handed mag release or any of those other things. And I'll tell you, one of the principal reasons, I think, is that nobody's going to go out there and redesign AR mags so that they'll fit left-handed lowers. And, you've got how many billions of them? Millions of them? There's at least, billions of them. There have to be billions of them. In any case, with all of those out there...
You heard it here, folks. At the AR-15 podcast, there are officially billions of magazines.
Well, some of the guys that were buying magazines in the last couple runs, I think they might have bought.
The demand is definitely there. Whether the supply has been able to keep up, it's still out.
So when it comes to that, I just don't think you're ever going to find a left-handed lower. I mean, unless you want to pay someone to build you a handful of left-handed magazines, it doesn't really make any sense. But when we talk about a lefty build rifle, they're principally upper receiver modifications that allow the rifle to function as if, well, for a manual of arms, as a left-handed person would apply. So of course it's left eject and your support hand's your right hand, your grip hand's your left hand. So any of the things related to the upper receiver are going to be modified with that in keeping. But honestly, it goes back to my original statement, JW. And in all of these years, as much as I've wanted the left-handed AR because I'm left-handed, I've never bought one. I've always just settled for right-handed uppers and modified my controls so that they're ambidextrous. I mean, is that pretty much your experience?
Yeah, when I first learned to play guitar, I had to make a choice as well as a lefty. As far as, do I play right-handed, strung normally? Do I play left-handed, strung normally, or left-handed, strung upside down? And I kind of decided, you know what? I'd rather be able to pick up any guitar and just play it. And I think that argument follows through with ARs, in that there's training scars that can develop if you start to rely too much on these ambidextrous controls or full-on left-handed rifles, and being able to just pick up any rifle that's built on this platform and feel comfortable with it, be able to do your high-speed manipulations with the lowest amount of drag possible. There's something to be said for that.
Absolutely. I had the same problem with guitars when I tried to learn how to play. But then I figured out I have absolutely no musical talent. So it was a very short run of trying to figure out how to do that. I think it was actually like the third class before I said, you know what, no. So,
this money's better spent on ammunition.
Absolutely.
As far as other ambidextrous options, obviously we mentioned the Raptor charging handle at the top.
Right.
Ambi charging handles are pretty nifty. If you don't want to have to reach your support hand all the way over to run it, there's kind of different schools of thought on that, whether it's a good scar to kind of build up as far as running things like a righty gun would be. I've seen some, I know a listener had mentioned it, there's some like ambi bolt. It's like a wraparound thing with a reciprocating bolt or something like that. So you can charge it kind of like a SCAR on the other side.
AdCore has a charging handle that's ambidextrous on their rifle, and
Yeah.
in when we went to the SHOT Show last year, I had a chance to go to the AdCore booth and fire the rifle, and they configured it in the left-handed form for me, and I've got to tell you that was a very nice experience because it is a really intuitive way of running the rifle, but in much the same way as the SCAR, you don't have to basically lift your head up and out of the way to charge the rifle. You're supporting it with your left hand, or I was, and then using the support hand to basically grab a hold of the charging handle and work the rifle. And so in the varying configurations that are allowing for the incorporation of a handguard mounted charging handle or some other style of solution like that, I think that's always a good way if you can get something that's designed like the AdCore design where it's ambidextrous. But other than that, I'm not really coming up with any off the top of
The one ambidextrous feature that I am absolutely enamored with is the ambidextrous safety. I really like being able to, as a lefty, flip my gun onto fire with my thumb, and then when my finger's coming off the trigger, to be able to kind of sweep it back onto safe,
Right.
and to use both sides of that safety. Whether that's a bad SCAR because if I picked up a righty gun and I was running it, and I wanted to put it on fire and shoot the bad guy, then my thumb would be lost. I don't know. But if I'm picking up ARs in the battlefield that have been dropped by the bad guys, I don't know. It's one of those things that is great to be able to argue about on a forum online, but
Right.
that's about it.
Well,
But yeah, definitely, that's something that I drop in almost every gun that I've got, just because it's great.
and there are some dogs out there, but there are a lot more really good quality ambi controls, and it's easy to figure them out. The dogs, everybody knows their dogs, and so read a few reviews, you'll be able to avoid the bad stuff, but I wouldn't be afraid to get out there and shop for most of that stuff. So I think for me, my big lefty go-to items are the bad lever ambi selector, the Raptor charging handle. I like the Norgon. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but the Norgon ambi mag release, and I'm more comfortable with having a right-handed bolt release on my lower receivers because I sweep my index finger up to close it when I'm getting ready to bring my bolt closed, as opposed to all of the other people I see who are right-handed shooters bring their support side hand up to the upper receiver to slap it with their palm, which I have no idea what that's all about. It's a button. It's not a big lever. So that's just my 2 cents on that. But I mean, those are the kind of the 3 go-to items that I'm about. What about you, JW?
Yeah, like I said, the safety is kind of about it. I run a bad lever. I'm still kind of experimenting with it. Definitely not a requirement.
Do you have a go-to
There's
ambi safety that you like?
No, I don't have anything really name brand Gucci at all. It's just kind of a plain Jane safety drop-in replacement that's got a hex nut on one side that holds the right-handed safety on.
Right.
One tip that I would throw out there is when you're Loctiting that hex key, that hex screw in, because you need to Loctite anything like that on your gun, don't use too much, and or else it'll flow around the safety selector, and that sucker will be selected very positively. So just watch that.
Well, so JW, you brought up a good point. You know, obviously, the AR was designed at a time where people weren't really concerned with on-demand ambidextrous controls. And so a lot of the things that are available were brought to the market after its introduction. But there are some alternative platforms that really started out with the idea that they need to address left-handed shooters from the get-go. Now, you listed here the SCAR, and that's one that you personally had a lot of experience with. So why don't you tell me your experience with the SCAR and what your thoughts are with it?
Yeah, the SCAR is a platform that is set up to have all those little manual of arms things be like if you were to have an AR set up to be ambi. The safety selector is good to go. You can drop the magazine from either side, and you can actually change the charging handle from one side to the other, or even get some sort of ambi one that has it on both. So it kind of gives you, it's like you set up your AR the way that you want it to, and it's just ready to go out of the factory. So that's been great. It's nice that all those features are in there, and I think it's probably something that was requested as part of that carbine contract.
Right.
That the military decided, you know what, that needs to be an attribute in your potential replacement to the M4, and so you're seeing the SCAR, the ACR, guns like that come out with those ambi features just baked right into them. Now,
the Tavor rifle is one that we were able to spend a lot of time with. Some of the IWI staff who were, I guess, a part of the deployment of the rifle within the Israeli Defense Force. And so their illustrations of some of their experiences with the Tavor rifle really highlighted to me some of the things that they put into it as a design component. So, of course, one of the big things was they wanted to make sure that, once again, it incorporated an attention to ambidexterity. The problem is that it's not natively ambidextrous in all of its controls, because you are forced to replace the right-handed bolt with the left-handed bolt to complete the conversion. Now,
right, you're dealing with a bullpup rifle, and so that issue of brass ejection is going to be compounded pretty seriously when it's right next to your face as a lefty.
So
the other controls, as far as the safety, it's already ambidextrous.
Right.
As far as the slide release or whatever they call it, that's right in front of the magazine, it's on the bottom of the gun, and it's a big old button. So it's not like there's a button on one side or the other. It's directly below the gun, and so you can access it freely from either side.
I see. That's supposed to be
replacement. Say that again.
I said, now that's a button that's supposed to be slapped.
Yeah. The replacement bolt that you can get, it's only about $100, and I think that's all you need. I mean, it involves a pretty serious disassembly of the gun, because you need to change that ejection port cover over to the other side. I think it involves taking the barrel out and everything and retorquing it up. I know Tavor would like you to send it to them so that they can re-headspace that new bolt with the barrel, but guys have kind of done it on their own and kind of just went for it.
Right.
But it's definitely, I mean, you can buy Tavor either left-handed or right-handed right off the shelf, and it's all the same parts. It's just a different bolt, and it's been switched over. And if you want to switch back and forth, it's possible, but it takes some time.
Well, and you know, I don't want that to deter anybody, because I think the reality is that $110 for a bolt is far less than buying a safety selector, a charging handle, and a mag release solution for a lower receiver. You're going to spend far more than $110, probably twice that for any of the combination of components you can get, unless you're basically shopping for airsoft parts. So that's not a huge barrier to the idea of getting a left-handed rifle, and it's certainly far less than the DIY option of getting like an Ovesky or a Stag Arms upper receiver, because those options themselves are pretty expensive as well. And so a factory off-the-floor rifle that you spent money to buy a new upper and all of the ambi controls is going to set you back probably the same amount cost-wise as it would to get you into a Tavor, which is arguably a $1,800 to $2,200 rifle plus a $110 bolt. So I think you're still on comparable ground there.
Plus the whole rigmarole of having to SBR your gun to make it as short as a Tavor.
Yeah, that's a $200 tax stamp and some engraving fees, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
the other one I threw here on the list was the Beretta ARX.
right.
I want to say the 22 version that's on the market right now is like the ARX 100, and the ARX 160 is the 5.56 version. But I really have zero experience with this platform. One of the cool things that is built into it is that the bolt, it looks similar to an AR bolt, but it actually has extractors on both sides. So from what I can tell, to change it from left ejection to right ejection or back, you would just need to change the charging handle from one side or the other, just like a SCAR, and then that would access the ejection port covers to either make them travel freely or to lock them up, and then it just starts ejecting out that side. That's just kind of what I can pull from a sentence or two on Wikipedia and a few photos. But yeah, if you guys have had some hands-on time with the Beretta ARX, we'd love to hear about that. That's one that definitely doesn't get talked about very much. I'm not sure, Reed, do you know if it's on the market in the U.S. yet?
I think it is.
Are they still trying to get approval to import it?
I don't think that they're having any difficulty at that point. I think, I had an opportunity to get hands-on with it at SHOT Show, and before that at the NRA show. I think the biggest problem with the Beretta ARX is that the market softened up right about the time they were getting ready to go full scale into importing it, and so, I think that's kind of it's a tough place to be when you're talking about a rifle that's in the same price range as the Tavor. The rifle itself is really, it's a very remarkable piece of ambidextrous construction. You were talking about the bolt. The charging handle that works your bolt basically kind of pops out off of a detent and goes to a place where it freely swings, and it swings from, say, if you're going right-handed to left-handed, it swings from the left-handed side around the top of the bolt through the open chamber to the other side, where it goes back into its equal position on the other side of the rifle, and you basically pop it back in past that detent point, and you're now a left-handed rifle. So with virtually 30 seconds of manipulation, you switched it over. And of course, I don't have any familiarity with the SCAR in this ambidextrous component, so I don't know whether that is as easy to go from right to left eject. But I thought that was a pretty ingenious starting point for them. Now, JW, take your mute off.
Yeah, the SCAR definitely doesn't involve left-handed jack. That's just not possible because there's only one hole in the side of the receiver. But yeah, I'd say 30 seconds would be a pretty quick tear down and switch over for the charging handle.
Right. So the Beretta's got some strong points, but I think that it was swallowed up by a lot of really positive feedback from the Tavor, and obviously a market that softened up. And frankly, I think that if you were to go into the market today, there are a lot of people producing ARs at that price point that really have a lot of strong appeal that I don't know that a bullpup is able to compete with because it's a foreign concept, I think, to most shooters. So with that, what do you think, JW? Any?
Yeah, I think that kind of covers it. I hope we didn't completely talk you out of the left-handed AR. It's definitely a interesting option for those of you so handed. But I think it's not really something that I'm going to pursue in my own collection. But there's definitely some considerations to be thought out if you're setting up your rifle to go left-handed.
We know when it comes to the ARs, I started off with a right-handed AR, and I'm almost afraid to think that if I went to a left-handed AR, I'd mess myself up. But I do have an interest in the ARX or the Tavor, so I think that if I were going to go left-handed, I would start there.
Yeah, I think baking in ambidextrous controls is something that we're going to continue to see, and it's a good thing. Just because the left-handed AR platform isn't necessarily a winner doesn't mean that it's a bad idea to build into the future of small arms.
Right, absolutely. Well, with that, we've got just a couple of pieces of feedback. Do you guys want to tackle that real quick, JW?
Sure. Eric S. here from Arizona says, "Hey guys, I really look forward to your podcast each week. I found your podcast several weeks ago and just finished catching up on the past episodes." Dang, he's been doing some listening. Eric, are you sick of our voices yet? He says, "One thing I heard you guys mention in several episodes that I must respectfully disagree with is there really being no need for a forward assist. He says, I use a MSR for predator hunting, and when I get out of my truck, I do so as quietly as possible. And since I always clear my weapon before putting it in the truck, I'm sure the fish cops would like to hear that." He says, pulling the charging handle back and just letting it fly forward to chamber around is just too noisy. So I slowly release the handle, but of course that does not completely chamber. So I use the forward assist to finish closing the bolt. While this is a unique situation, I feel that it's good enough reason to have that forward assist. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents worth. Keep up the great podcasts. Yeah, Eric, that's a great point. It's something that I have run into before. A month or two ago, we were doing a shoot house class, and one of the things where we make ready before we enter the house, we gas up our pistol and our rifle, check our lights, check our armor, all that. And iPro, EarPro, one of the things that they really like to do is the press check. So you actually rack your action back a little bit, and you digitally feel with your fingers that there's a round in the chamber on your handgun and your long gun. And you do it with your fingers because, hey, half the time we're shooting at night. So you're not going to turn your light on just to look down in your gun. When you're doing that press check, sometimes it's not going to go all the way in the battery. And so giving a tap on the back of the slide when you're running a semi-auto handgun, or that why am I blanking out? The forward assist, excuse me, is a good way to ensure that you're fully chambered and that gun's going to go bang when you want it to. So that's a great point, Eric.
Well, I'm going to give my contrarian 2 cents myself. And so when the original design was fielded, the bolt's depression, which is right under the dust cover, has a scallop in it. And basically, Stoner did not design it with a forward assist. The assumption being that if you needed to seat that bolt, your thumb in that scallop, pressing it home, should be enough if the rifle is in its proper condition for shooting. So,
But then my fancy multicam shooting gloves might get dirty.
well, wait a minute. Your shooting gloves are supposed to get dirty. It's your hand that is supposed to stay sheepskin soft and callus free.
There you go. That's a good push in right in that scalloped area. I'm sure could get the job done.
Right.
Too.
So, I think some detractors of the forward assist would say that having a mechanical device that would allow you to actually force the bolt into battery at a time when there might be something in the way of an obstruction that could affect something like chamber pressure because of a delay in the bolt coming free. Do I know of anything that's gone catastrophic because of that? I don't. And I don't know that if you heard someone tell you about their cousin's best friend's boss's brother that had it happen, that you'd be able to actually believe it as well. But for what it's worth, I think that certainly both approaches are viable. It's just a matter of where you want to stand on it. So,
The argument lives on.
Absolutely. So, Brant C. writes in with a particularly troubling issue, which I'm sure is going to lead us to not be able to really help him out, and which will leave him just as troubled as when he arrived. But
well, that's encouraging.
So here's what he says. He says, need some help, folks. I have an Ares Armor Harpy free float upper. It's in a 5.56 configuration. And he says, this sucker hates Wolf performance ammo. He said, just got it out to the range, and all I had was Wolf. He says, I know. Feed it brass, and it will be happy. Well, I have a lot of Wolf and very little brass ammo. I completely disassembled it and cleaned and lubed the hell out of it. I'm going out to the at lunch tomorrow to do some testing. He says he has some American Eagles, some ZQ1 5.56, which is brass. I don't even know who that is. And some Wolf Performance that's steel. He says, is there anything I can do to the chamber as far as polishing it to help the issues of steel ammo not performing? The biggest problem I have is failure to feed or double feed. I gathered that the cases are sticking, causing rough extraction, slowing down the bolt, and having the extractor slip off the rim. I put a rubber donut in the extractor spring for my testing tomorrow. Also, would polishing the chamber help with this issue? If so, links for sites you can recommend to get information on how to polish it correctly without putting it out of spec would be helpful. It is not a chrome-lined chamber or barrel. Any thoughts or tips are greatly appreciated. So, JW, I'm kind of the opinion that you've got two things here that just aren't going to ever change. I think the first is that I don't think steel cases are ever going to perform like brass when it comes to their ability to expand into a chamber and basically pull back after your chamber pressures have died down and your heat's died down a little. And I think that that's one of the principal reasons brass is used. And the other thing is I don't think that you're really going to be able to have much luck polishing the bolt to change that interactive dynamic in a way that wouldn't itself modify your chamber.
Yeah, I don't really have too much insight into it. I was trying to kind of think about his failures as far as why he might be double feeding. Because it seems like... Go ahead.
I think the double feeding may be a function of the bolt not cycling in time and still being able to strip a second round before it ejects the brass.
So it's more of a failure to eject rather than a double feed. It's one live and one empty.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I've never had any issues with steel, so I don't have much insight. I've never run an Ares armor. I've kind of stuck with other companies. I guess I'll leave it at that. So I don't know whether their chamber is a little closer to a 223 chamber than a 556, if that makes a difference. But yeah, getting in there and polishing up the chamber is probably something that I wouldn't do. He says all he's been running in it is steel, so I would definitely get that brass running through it, see how that runs. If you have similar issues, then call up Ares and have them take a look.
Yeah,
but
we're out of spec.
Definitely give it a try with both kinds of ammo before getting the polishing stone out.
Well, and that brings up an issue. I mean, certainly it's possible for chambers to be out of spec, or for you to have an expectation of what the spec is on a chamber and it be something else. I think it makes sense to take it to a gunsmith and have them spec your chamber for you. I've had it done. It's, I mean, from my perspective, it's pretty straightforward. Give it to my gunsmith. He says, "Here's what it is." I'm not sure what happens behind the curtain, but certainly to get a little comfort in what it is you're shooting might allow you to work out with your gunsmith why you're having that particular problem. Because I have a rifle that it'll eat up steel cased ammo all day long, and I have another rifle that it chokes on it every single time. It won't cycle it. So when it comes down to it, I just chalk it up to a finicky rifle, and I know you don't want to hear that, but I think that is probably the best starting point. But I think JW's right.
Getting it to a point where you can run steel, it would kind of be my target, because there's some serious cost savings involved, and over the long term, that's been worth it for me, is to have something that can run steel without problems.
Right. So, I think with that, we've pretty much finished off the feedback. Of course, it's a back-to-school week, and for everybody that has kids, I'm sure you're more concerned with the happy wife, happy life, and keeping the kids all pulled together as their endless summer is coming to an end. But we hope you guys get caught up and start writing in some more, because we sure love to hear from you. And I think in the coming weeks, what we'd really like to have you send in are ideas of things that you'd like us to talk about. We always like to hear what's going on with you and what you want us to tell you about. We've got a lot of new manufacturers on the line. We've got a bunch of new products and accessories coming up through the ranks. We've got a lot of focus on some of the pistol ARs, and these are all things that we're willing to come back and talk about and do more shows on. In addition to that, we're already gearing up for SHOT Show, so we're kind of getting into the countdown to the end of the year, and we want to just be able to finish it off right. So let us know what you'd like us to talk about. Let us know who you'd like us to talk to. Let us know what we can do to help you make your rifles better and make your experience at the range more enjoyable, and anything we can help you out with when it comes to this great sport of shooting that we all really enjoy. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with the outro. So I want to let you know that you can enter the AR-15 podcast rifle giveaway sponsored by Brownells by going to www.brownells.com. www.ar15podcast.com/winner to join the FRN mailing list. You can also enter the giveaway by leaving written feedback on iTunes and Stitcher. And I want you to remember that just giving us a rating will not give us the information we need to know who you are for the giveaway. So leave that written feedback so that we can get a rifle to you if we pull your name. You can send us questions and comments at feedback@ar15podcast.com. You can also send us a recorded voicemail by using the SpeakPipe plugin on the right-hand side of the AR-15 podcast website. Subscribe and listen to the AR-15 podcast for free at firearmsradio.tv/iTunes. And be sure to leave an iTunes review so iTunes can place the show higher in the searches of potential listeners. JW?
If you're listening to us over on the Stitcher app, be sure to leave us a review there. And share your pictures with us over on Flickr at flickr.com/groups/blackrifle. Watch us live Monday evenings at firearmsradio.tv/plus. These video recordings make their way over to YouTube at youtube.com/firearmsradio, where you can go and look at our entire archive and see how our faces have aged over the years. You are so inclined to be on Facebook, go to facebook.com/firearmsradio to receive updates from the entire network. And please check out other podcasts there on the network. There's some really great shows out there, and there's things that are being added. Every month it seems like there's at least one new show. Don't forget to use our Brown Nose affiliate link for all your AR-15 parts at ar15podcast.com/parts. And for everything else, when you're shopping Amazon, please go to firearmsradio.tv first and click through our affiliate link.
Well, with that, we've got another podcast behind us. We're still working on our sound quality so we can deliver to you the best podcast we can. So bear with us and remember that just like you, we are fans and hobbyists, but we all have our day jobs. So as soon as I get a big salary and I quit my day job, I can devote the time and effort to making this studio quality recordings. Until then, just give me a little time and we'll get there eventually. In the meantime, JW, I guess that's another good show.
Yeah, get out there and shoot. Let us know how it is.
All right, folks, have a good week.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv.